Welcome to another episode of Unleashing the Future of Work, a guide podcast live. I hope wherever you're watching and tuning in from that you are doing well today, staying safe, and doing something awesome, hopefully, on this lovely Wednesday afternoon. And for some of you all, evening or even morning. Please let us know where you're watching and listening from, whether it be internationally or domestically. We'll show you some love. Today, I have a really special guest, someone who is a pioneer to a degree and a leader in the design industry, and someone that I've actually followed his work for quite some time. Eli Woolery is an author, speaker, and designer with a depth of experience in product user interface and user experience design. Since 2013, he's co-taught implementation, which is a 2-quarter capstone class for senior undergraduate product design students at the Stanford University. Eli is also the design stories director at Invision, where he writes, speaks, and runs workshops to help large enterprises adopt better design practices, because a lot of design a lot of large enterprises suck. He's also the co-host, along with Aaron Walter, who's awesome as well, of the Design Better podcast, which was nominated for Webby in 2020, the Design Thinking Handbook, which he wrote for Invision and is used in the curriculum at UC Berkeley's Jacobs Institute of Design. So as you can tell, he's all about good design, as well as USC's Graduate School of Business. Also, fun fact, right now he's working on his first novel for young readers, and I'll share a link to that in the comments so some of you with kids can check it out. I'm really excited to talk to him because we're going to talk about probably one of our favorite subjects, design, and also kind of how does it apply to your career too. So and a little bit about his background and how he started in design. So with that said, let me bring on Eli to the show. Hey, man.
Hey, Tim. Well, thanks. I don't think I've ever had such a kind introduction, so I appreciate that.
Thank you so much. I try to do my best. I try to do my best when I do these lives. How are you doing, man? How are you hanging in there with everything going on in the world?
I'm doing okay. It's a hard time, and I'm sure harder for a lot of other people out there than me. But being empathetic, being a designer, I'm just feeling a lot of empathy for the folks that are, experiencing various degrees of tragedy right now. So yeah, I think that's the first message to go out. Is just I hope you're all doing okay, and keep going, because it's a tough time.
Yeah, it's I have been feeling it, even similar to you. It's just all you can do is give empathy in times like this, when so many people are fighting a battle that's exists for so long, and do your part in building and being a part of the solution. I want you to share a little bit more about how you got started in your career in design, because you and I have talked before, and you have a pretty dynamic career. And before you get started, I want to show love to Justin, who's tuning in. Thank you so much, Justin, for tuning in, and Payal, as well as Punita, who are tuning in from all over the world right now. Please, if you have any question for the amazing Eli Woolery, please have them. Anything you want to know, ask them, and I'll address them as we talk. So yeah, how did you get started in design, Eli?
It was a little bit of a roundabout thing, and thanks for calling it dynamic. Some people would call it having a short attention span. but when I was a kid, I used to love to draw and make things and build Legos, take things apart. And when I was thinking about colleges, I actually wanted to go to art school because I thought I wanted to be an artist. My parents, my mom especially, being a bit of the stereotypical Jewish mother, was pushing me a little bit more towards maybe a practical career like engineering. And so I ended up getting into Stanford, and I was kind of looking at the majors, and the only engineering major that had a focus on art as well as product design. And so it was this kind of unique thing where it's a mechanical engineering major, but you also take a lot of studio design and art classes. Like, well, I can suffer through the engineering side of this if I can take a bunch of art classes, I think. So I ended up going to that program. And it was wonderful. At the time, it was even more closely connected to the art department, and especially through one professor in particular, Matt Kahn, who had actually taught there for basically the half of the university history for 60 years by the time he retired. And he really drove this really wonderful kind of collaboration between the more engineering side of design and then the more artistic kind of studio-based side of design, which was as far as I know, kind of unique at the time anyway. And through that, I found a couple things. One that I really did like, the parts of engineering that allowed me to build things, the things that were around manufacturing and 3D modeling and that type of thing. I actually really did like that. And then I could also found that I could kind of bring an artistic side into that to some degree, an artistic creative side. So, so when I left university, I actually struggled to find a job at first. It took me a little while to find a product design job, and I ended up being an intern at in a biological research station in Bermuda, which is totally random, but it was the kind of the first thing that I could find. And
That's super random, man.
Yeah, totally random. I lived there for about a year, and I got really into diving and research diving, and kind of when I was a kid, when I was even younger than when I was thinking about doing art, I loved marine biology. So it kind of resonated with my marine biology desires as a little kid to learn more about that. And then I thought, wow, this is cool. How can I kind of combine that interest with product design? And I found a company in the area where I live now, actually in the Monterey area, that does underwater photography equipment and lighting equipment. And I was like, well, that'd be a great way to do that. So I ended up interning there for a little bit and then getting hired on. And for me, that company is called Light in Motion. And for me, that was, I always tell my students, that was like a master's degree in design engineering and manufacturing, because we built everything in-house. Actually, because I have a little prop here. Give me a second.
Yeah. Let's see it. We love props. This is going to be like the first prop on the show.
Get my headphones off. So, because I had I was talking to my daughter's class about this. These are the kind of things that I used to build and design, these housings for underwater photography, and so I got really into that. You know, we were kind of spoiled because we have great areas to dive here, and part of my job was to go out and test the equipment. Occasionally, it would take us to crazy cool places like Fiji. We got to go dive in Fiji, and through that, my kind of interest in photography got piqued, and also marine biology. I got more and more interested in it. So I ended up leaving Light in Motion and working on a degree in marine science for a number of years, and still doing photography during that time. And that stint in science made me realize that I'm not a very good scientist. I like the field work, but I got really bored with all the grant proposals you got to write and all that stuff.
That's how I feel about UX research. When I did UX research, I'm like, it's cool, but I'm not. I can't be too deep in user feedback every time.
Totally. Yeah, I hear you. That's not my favorite part of the design process either. So I was doing these kind of random things, and I started with a friend of mine, an underwater photography magazine, and that was sort of my first foray into print design. And the magazine ran for about 3 years, and you can see, it's sort of embarrassing, but you could see like the progression of pretty poor typography in the beginning, and got at least slightly better over the course of it. So I learned a few things from that. One is, just around entrepreneurship and starting a business. And then, there's the kind of the creative direction and design side of things too. And we had the misfortune of starting that magazine right around the time the economy was crashing. This was like 2008, 2009. And also the print magazine, like advertising industry, was crashing in a corresponding way. So it's pretty tough to make any ad revenue at that point. We ended up closing the magazine, but I still wanted to do something that was entrepreneurial. I didn't want to just go back to a regular day job. And I was kind of looking around, and I had been doing, along with the magazine, some consulting and doing, first website design and app design. And I thought, well, maybe I'll look into this whole startup scene, in Silicon Valley. I had kind of, done my undergraduate around the time of the first .com boom. So a lot of my, classmates at the time were heading off into these startups, most of which no longer exist at this point. But, a few of them, made it big, like Google and all that stuff. So, I was interested in that scene, but I really didn't know that much about it. And I ended up applying for this program called Runway, which was run by Eric Schmidt's venture capital firm, Innovation Endeavors. And the cool thing about this, you probably heard about Y Combinator or some of these other,
like very renowned.
Yeah, startup accelerators. This was quite different. This was they had very much a design focus. So the sort of founder of the program came out of the D school at Stanford, and they were like, how can we use design to like attack startup-y problems? So that was interesting. And the other interesting thing was, with Y Combinator, you got to come in with a team and probably, really well-baked product, if not, not just a half-baked idea of what you're doing, but traction, essentially most likely to be able to get into the program. And for this program, it was like, come in with no idea, no partner, and we'll set you up with a team and some money to work on ideas. So I went through that application process, which was, to me, it was harder than getting to Stanford. It was super rigorous.
Commentator.
It was like many months, and but I ended up getting in and finding a really good team. And actually, one of my teammates, Timmy Gebru, I'm still friends with. Was a great experience getting to know her and work with her. And we did the whole startup-y thing. We tried these different product ideas, and I think what we learned a few things. I mean, one of them is just that model is very difficult, where you're working with people you don't know and you're coming in with no idea. And even if you're kind of using the design process to try to find something, it's probably not the right mechanism for starting a company. I think most successful companies are started with, the founders have felt the pain personally, or very close to it, or very knowledgeable about it, and can create a product that, at least in the beginning, works really well for them. And then they start to, scale it and grow it out to an audience that's much more big and diverse than they are as just a founding group. But the idea of using design thinking to start a company, I think it's challenging for sure. Yeah. So I did that, and then that's around the time too that I started to think about. I'd known at that point that at some point I wanted to teach, and I just loved the program I came through at Stanford, and I wanted to figure out a way to help. So I started out as a coach in the capstone class at Stanford for product design. And then the head of the program, Bill Burnett, next year asked me to come on as a lecturer. And so I've been doing that for the past 7 years. I've been a lecturer for the capstone class, which has been a really great experience. It's a 2-quarter class where students come up with a product idea. It's similar in some ways to the runway program I just mentioned, where you try to find a user group and a focus area, and then you try to bring a product solution as close to market as you can. Some students, actually, the very small minority, take that and actually do a startup with it. Most just kind of end it with a class or hand it off if it's a nonprofit thing. But lots of really, really fantastic, interesting projects come out of that. Products for autistic young people. This year we had a team working on like a ventilator, like low-cost ventilator project, and there's just all sorts of really neat things that I get a chance to help the students out with.
So let me ask you, throughout your career, who 2-part question, what drove your passion to get into teaching? Because you do a lot of it now, even through your work with Invision. And also, who have been some of those design leaders that have kind of mold the way you think about design and the work that you do?
I might start with the second question first, and then you might have to remind me about the first question. But
no worries.
As far as who I admire, so coming into this role, was originally a design education role at Invision. I was hired by Aaron Walter, who was leading design at MailChimp before he joined Invision, and I actually didn't know much about him before kind of talking to him about this role, but he, for me, is like a very inspiring leader, both in kind of an external facing method, external facing way, and the kind of content he produces and the things that he's involved in, but also internally, he's just a really fantastic manager and people leader. And so he's been a really huge inspiration to me. Other inspiring designers, I was lucky enough as an undergrad to have David Kelly, the founder of IDEO, as my advisor.
David Kelly.
Yeah, David Kelly. I got to know him a little bit then. And then since I started teaching, I was, my office hours are outside his office. I bump into him, and I've had a chance to interview him a few times, or podcast and other things. And he's just always inspired me as a person who has taken this concept of design thinking, which didn't necessarily originate with him, but which he was able to popularize and create kind of a movement around, which we now see, permeates pretty much every industry. So that's been inspiring. And then Matt Kahn, who I mentioned before, just for being a great teacher, for being a great critic, and just an inspiring person. And I guess that would kind of lead into the teaching thing. I would say early in my career, I didn't think too much about teaching, but it was sort of like, I did think about ways, how could I give back to the kind of community that helped me get to where I am, and teaching seemed like one way to maybe accomplish that. Again, I thought, well, I'll just prototype it first. Like my colleague Bill Burnett has this, wrote this book called Designing Your Life, and a new one called Designing Your Work Life, and has this idea of bringing the design process to your career, which I think we'll probably talk about later. But there's this idea of prototyping, like how do you think of a small way to try something you think you might be interested in without like quitting your job and diving in full force. And so coaching was sort of a prototype for me, and I did
like building a startup.
Right, exactly. And I found it, a few things. I mean, I definitely struggled a bit at first because I'm an introvert. It's a little hard for me to get up in front of a class and teach. But I think by pushing myself into some things that I fear, I feel like I've learned a lot, and I've been able over the years to get a little bit better at that, especially with some coaching for people like Bill. But two, the thing that's most meaningful to me is the kind of one-on-one relationships with the students and helping them. And Bill and I and the other people I teach with, like Brett Williams, we all say at the end of class when we send the seniors off, get office hours for life. And I definitely get taken up on that. I get to talk to a lot of my prior students and kind of help them sometimes when they get stuck. And that's meaningful. That's like feeling like you're having an impact when you can help people in that way.
Yeah, no, that's really, really powerful. And so I want to kind of talk to you a little bit more. Oh, well, let me show some love to the people who've been tuning in the comments. Hey, Jamila. Hey, Dana. Hey, Sabrina. Hey, Suresh. What's up? Punita. Hey, you all. Hey, Akila. Let us know if you have any thoughts or any questions for Eli in the comments. Let us know, and we'll definitely address them. So with I feel as if design is currently in this context where it's now back to the Bauhaus movement. It's like everyone's doing simplicity. Everyone's doing like big, bold black letters, which is pretty awesome. I want to ask you, where's design going? What's the future of design?
That's a good question. Well, starting with what you said about Bauhaus, I think that's interesting. Matt Kahn, who I mentioned, very much came out of that school, and that was sort of part of his teaching curriculum. Actually, came out of the Bauhaus. But where's it going? I mean, I think if anything, recent events taught us that we really need to listen to people, and designers are great at listening to people, I would say.
We would hope.
Yeah, I would hope. Not be self-promote our industry, but at least that's a skill that we claim to have. And I think we could do even better. But I feel like if we're really going to design products that address the needs of everybody, we need to be able to talk to all different types of people and understand all different types of people, understand their challenges. That seems like a huge opportunity for design, especially right now when there's, to some degree, recent events. Obviously, there's a lot of tragedy, but in some ways, you could see, if you want to have a silver lining, some opportunity there to reset things, to think about, are we really designing products the right way? Are we talking to the people we need to talk to? And I think, I think there is some job security in design going forward over the next number of years, because we do have the ability. I think we can even get better at it, and we can teach other people how to get better at it too.
Yeah. So shout out to Edgar, who's saying, checking in from ATL, the Atlanta. Thanks for the content again. So he's loving this content and a lot of things that you're saying, Eli.
Oh, nice.
So shout out to that. So, let's dive deep on designing your work life, right?
Mm-hmm.
You're a remote worker. The Invision does not have an office, which is like super cool, right? And I want you to actually plug in, how can people get a remote job with Invision? Because I'm sure there's people who are dying to work with you and the amazing Invision team. But, how do you design your work life, right? As a designer who works remotely for one of probably the most successful design-driven organizations in the world.
Yeah, thank you. Well, it's true. Invision, we're somewhere between 700 and 800 employees now, I think. And when I started 4 years ago, we are about 200. So we've been growing pretty fast. And since the beginning, we've been remote. And for me, it's not a new thing. I've been doing remote stuff for about 14, 15 years now. And I think there are a lot of pros and cons to it, to be honest. Like, I think for me, I feel like to some degree it's easiest at different life stages. So I would say in the very beginning of my career, when I was just, let loose from college, I didn't have a bunch of friends in the area I worked in. Being remote would have been pretty challenging. I think I could have done it, but it would have been more challenging. But now that I have sort of a more established circle of friends, I have my family, my kids, being remote just has a huge set of advantages. I spend more time with them. There's much more flexibility, that type of thing. So I would say there's pros and cons, but given what's going on lately, we're just running this giant worldwide experiment, basically, where many, not all, but many industries are going fully remote and seeing that, wow, we really can do this. That this is an effective way of working and collaborating. And I think as far as the designing your life, being remote really gives you a lot more opportunities to do that, especially as it reflects your daily schedule. Because assuming you're not just in meetings all day, which can happen, obviously, if you're a manager, you can be a bit more tied down. But if you have some flexibility, you can. I'm going to do a little designing your life example around my own particular lifestyle. So I'm a surfer. I love the ocean, and one of the reasons we moved back to this area was because it's very accessible. We're down in Carmel, Monterey area, and if I was in a traditional job, I'd probably be stuck at the office all day. I couldn't get a surf in, but time permitting and weather permitting, schedule permitting, I can do my work in the morning, get a surf at some point, come back, and not have it impacts my work, if anything, in a positive way. So I think thinking about, how do I kind of arrange my daily schedule gets a lot easier if you are remote, and assuming you're getting your shit done. Sorry, I don't know if we're allowed to curse here, but
fine.
and all that good stuff. But yeah, I guess at zooming out and then kind of looking at designing your life as more kind of a career arc, I would say, some amount of it has been just sort of dumb luck and happenstance, but I have taken a prototyping mindset, I think, even before I realized that to my work and to the things I did. So, and I've done a lot of different stuff that I dove into in my earlier kind of bio, but some of it I didn't even mention. Like, I was a professional photographer for a while, and I've done things that just kind of struck me as an area of interest, and I wondered, could I do that as a profession? And I was able to kind of like try it out in a lightweight way, and then go into it more fully. But Bill Burnett's book, I mentioned I teach with, Designing Your Life, is a great resource. And then he just came out with another book. I'm going to give him a plug here. Designing Your Work Life. We interviewed him yesterday about that. And the first book is sort of more for if you're at that stage where you're ready for a big shift in your life, or you're thinking about, wow, I really need to explore a bunch of different possibilities. You're sort of like this big ideation point in your life. The second book, The Designing Your Work Life, is a little bit more like, I'm at this job, I don't love this job, I'm thinking about leaving, or I just feeling stuck. And this will help you if you feel like you have financial obligations or otherwise, where you can't just like pack up and leave. But how do you make your work life where you are right now better? And if you have to quit, how do you go about doing that in a sensible way? So they're both really helpful. But yeah, I think design is a great tool for thinking about how you approach your life and career.
Yeah. And I think what I love about even what you shared about your situation is the flexibility working remotely gives you, and how it does apply depending on what stage in your career you're in. Right? And even for me right now, as we're building Guide, we're a fully remote team. We do have engineers that we're working with in international areas, and my co-founder, he's actually living in Seattle. And, one of the things as we grow, we're really intentional about, we do still need some sense of a physical presence, especially for a design team. It's like, it's cool designing through virtual screens, but it just, you miss the creativity, the creative spark, almost the empathy for each
Sure.
other, even
Yeah.
in critiques, and the presence. And
Yeah.
for even for me as a leader, it's like I miss that.
Mhm. Yeah.
I
Absolutely.
like because it's weird just always you had I think the synergy of having people around, that's a huge component to a great organization. And I
Sure.
think some
Yeah.
organizations have found a way to like find their own harmony. But I love the point that you said. It's really a matter of the flexibility, because I think where we're going in terms of the future of the workplace is that you're still going to have spaces. They're going to be more so huddle spaces, but like you can never take away the community component that comes to work.
That's very true. I think, I was listing some of the disadvantages, but another one that you mentioned is just the empathy building of being together. And, I think the one good thing Invision does is it gives us, at least in normal times, plenty of opportunities to get together on a regular basis in person, because I do think you need that. There is maybe a little bit of a team stage to that too, where if you're brand new to a team, there's these frameworks. I can't remember who came up with it, but this idea of like forming, storming, and norming,
Yeah.
and then high performing, I guess, the last one. um, that's a lot harder to do, the forming and storming, if you're all remote, I think.
Mm.
Probably once you're through those, once you've established norms, being remote on a more regular basis might be easier. But yeah, you do miss a lot on the in-person. This is just one observation too, but I think there are certain personalities that work better in remote situations too. And I've
Mm.
noticed the personalities that struggle a little bit, and then that I've seen actually leave the company sooner, are the ones that are a bit more abrasive. And I don't think that that's necessarily a bad trait, to be maybe a little abrasive and
Mm.
very off the cuff. But the thing is, it's tough when you're remote and you can't pick up on all those cues to know, what is this person finding wrong with me, or why
Yeah.
are interactions so difficult? And I think it can make it hard to work really kind of synergistically with your colleagues. So those are maybe some of the scenarios where it's better to at least start off in person until you really get to know each other, and then you say, "Oh yeah, that's Bob. That's just what the way he is. He's abrasive like that." You just get past it. So
Yeah, it's true. It's true to build that chemistry. So let me ask you, Eli, with you shared a little bit about how you got your start in design, and just your amazing career path, and how you've had a lot of different roles. Do you encourage people when it comes to their careers to early on try a lot of different things?
mm.
Similar to you, or is it more so, if you feel as if you want to be a master at one craft, go
hmm
for it. What are your thoughts on that?
That's a great question, and that's one that we kind of dove into with Bill yesterday. And I guess I'm a couple of different minds of it. One is like, if you're the type of person that is just, as many are, just loves being challenged by new things and learning new things, the kind of startup small company environment can be a great place to start out, because you do get to wear a lot of different hats. Like, you may
Yeah.
be in name, you're the designer, but you're still involved in like early business decisions. You're still figuring out
Hmm.
strategy. You may even be able to, help on the engineering side. So I think that's great. But also what you said about mastery, I think, and this is one critique that Bill gently put out into the world around our kind of current generation or so of students, is that they don't have a lot of patience to stick around and master something. They're like, okay, we've done this a couple times. What's next? Let's move on to the next job. Let's move on to the next thing.
Yeah.
And I say that's actually how I feel like I am, and how my career has been in a lot of way over the years. But you might be missing out on an opportunity to really master something, and that that could be a missed opportunity,
Yeah.
especially because we there's this Dan Pink book called Drive, where he examines like what makes us happy at work. And a big part of it, he boils down to these three things: mastery, autonomy, and purpose. So to
Hmm.
be happy, you have to feel like
Shout out to Daniel Pink.
Daniel
Make
Pink.
sure you
Yeah.
check out Drive.
You feel like you're mastering something, like you're getting better at something, that you have some amount of autonomy, like your boss isn't constantly breathing down your neck and micromanaging you. And then there's a broader purpose behind your work, that you're affecting change or affecting people in a positive way. And so if you're always hopping around in the next thing, it can be probably a little tougher to get into that mastery frame of mind. So I'll throw that caveat out there, but I'm probably a really bad example of that because I have jumped around a lot because I have jumped around a lot in my career.
No, I love that. I love that. I think one of the things I've coined this new term of like focus on developing a W-shaped skill set, because we tell people to develop a T-shaped skill set, which is like go deep in one area and then understand high level others. But actually, I think what's really going to be the future of work, and really the mindset that's more important, is that you being able to go deep in one area and then going back up the top to see how it's all interconnected. And I think as you were talking, I was thinking to myself, for a designer, mastery is just a matter of like, how do you construct things that appeal but solve a problem, right? So for us, like we've often done like we've had like probably multiple lives in multiple roles, because we know we're not great at one thing, but we understand that maybe each role plays a specific solves the problem from a different vantage point, a different perspective. So that's like what makes you amazing as a designer. And I think often, you meet a lot of designers early in their career, product design, like they kind of struggle and saying like, am I great at visual? Am I great at interaction? Can I do the entire thing? And it's like, you're a great designer, be a great designer, but understand that like mastery for you is just you being able to understand and understand where you can maybe add the most value. You don't have to feel as if like you have to force yourself to be this like end-to-end tool chain.
Yeah. No, I love that. I love the W-shaped personality. I think that's great. And as designers, we're pretty fortunate in that our role is pretty broad in a lot of ways. Not for every kind of designer, every design role, but we do, again, especially if we're a startup, we get to wear a lot of different hats, and everything from a more kind of technical craft-based perspective to understanding the user, talking to users, and then again having some input on the kind of more strategic side of things too.
Yeah. So Eli, I would love to have you share, how can people get a job at Invision? How can they get a remote job at Invision? What's the plug, man?
Oh boy. I wish I could give you a secret passcode to get in. I'm not going to talk about Invision specifically here, but this is a broader strategy that will work for you regardless of the company. And this is again something Bill mentions in his books. If you're interested in a specific company or industry, the worst thing you could do really is just apply blindly to positions that are listed on their website, because there are just likely to be hundreds or even thousands of applicants. It's going to be really hard to stand out. It's just a really bad way to take that approach. And believe me, I've tried it before myself at different points in my career, and I've always been frustrated. The thing you want to do is figure out a way to talk to people and have them just tell their story. Like what is working there like? What are their challenges? Just get to understand the company. Don't come in with this perspective that I'm going to get a job here necessarily, but just understand like what is working there like. And oftentimes you might learn a few things. You might learn, that wow, I didn't know this about this company. Maybe this isn't a good fit for me. Maybe the culture, right? So that you've just saved yourself, whatever months of heartache if you did get up hired and hating it. But also like just you'll start to build connections that can help you, and it can also surface opportunities that aren't publicly available or aren't even really maybe even eternally available. So just a personal story on that front. My last startup job before Invision, I was my daughter was I think 4 or 5, somewhere around there, and my son was just about to be born, so I was very excited. And the day after my son was born, I got an email saying, hey, sorry to say this, but our company is splitting up and we're having to lay off a bunch of people, including you. Wow. So I was like, whoa, I just had another kid and I don't have a job. That doesn't feel too good. But it ended up being actually a really great opportunity to step back. And first I just took some time off, and I was fortunate to be able to, draw from savings to do that. And just spend time with my son and my family, and just think about like what I wanted to do next, and give me some time to explore. And so I knew I wanted to do something remote because we were down in Monterey at the time. I didn't want to commute to Silicon Valley. and I knew Invision was remote because I used the product a lot as a designer. And so I was just kind of searching around LinkedIn for interesting people at Invision, and I saw Aaron Walter, who had been hired not that much longer, who was heading up this team called Design Education. I was like, oh, that's interesting. You know, I have a design background, I have some education background. So I just, pinged him on LinkedIn and say, hey, could you tell me more about what you're doing? And as I understand the story anyway, they kind of created a role for me there. And I was, we started this team together. So there are all these kind of latent opportunities out there in the world that aren't going to be listed on a job site. And you just need to start talking to people and realize that that's going to take some time too. It's not going to be an immediate solve, but in the end, it will be a lot more effective than applying for those open roles.
Preach, Eli. Those are some tips. So shout out to Justin, who's saying, excellent perspective, Tim. Focus on W skill set. On a W-shaped skill set, you'll be able to go deep into area going back for design masters about how you construct things. Oh, shout out to you. Thanks so much, Justin, for taking notes, brother. I appreciate you, man. And also check out Justin's awesome event that he's hosting. He is hosting. Justin, make sure to put it in the comments, man. You're hosting a huge conference that I am going to be a part of, which is going to be super cool. So make sure to share it so people can be a part of it. And it's a conference for creatives. So Dana is saying, how do you find remote opportunities? Eli, do you have any suggestions on that?
That's a good question. I feel like that's really going to be changing. I would have had a different answer a couple months ago. I think right now there are so many organizations that have had to shift to remote potentially, and that many of those roles will stay remote is my guess. And that's what, surveys are starting to say. So I think there's going to be a lot more of those types of opportunities out there. Second, I don't know. There used to be sites like remotework.co, I think, and a number of other ones that really focused on remote positions. I'm sure those would still be helpful, but again, I think there are so many now that will be shifting in that direction. So it's probably worth, even if a position says that it's in person, if you're really interested in it, again, talk to people, find out is that really true? Are there opportunities? Like how many of you are remote right now? Because my guess is companies are going to be a lot more open to remote work, given that, we're still showing productivity. We're still showing all the things that we need to show and for the most part in this mode of working. And in fact, some studies are showing that people are even more productive when they're able to work remote. So I think there are going to be more and more of those kinds of roles open.
That's huge. That's huge. With that said, Eli, what's next for the Design Better podcast and the Invision family? What are some of the big things that you all have coming on in the pike?
Oh wow, yeah, it's exciting. So we up to this point had been having a seasonal approach. So we'd have about 10 episodes per season, some amount of bonus episodes in between. But we're going to be rolling over to a more kind of continual deployment, so more regular episodes. So there's going to be more and more guests, and we've got some really exciting ones. Don't tell anybody. Well, actually, I guess we're live here. So we did have Seth.
We're telling everybody.
Seth Godin on the podcast, so he'll be coming out. I've been
that's gonna be huge
admirer of his work over the years. A couple other names that I can't say yet, but that are big names and exciting. So for me, it's cool because it's given the frequency of the guests that we're going to have on. We're going to have to, and we've tried to do this in the past too, but zoom out from the specifically like design focused lens into like how do people collaborate, how are they creative together. And one other one on that front, we just interviewed a couple of the creators of the Apple series Home, which is about these very interesting homes, across the world. So I think there's a lot that we in the design and technology industries can take away from, filmmakers and writers and other areas that maybe we haven't had a chance to reflect on as much. So that's probably what I'm most excited about right now is let's talk to some people. As my colleague Aaron says, like, let's stop our navel gazing so much. Let's talk to people who might have different ways of approaching this kind of creative work and learn from them.
I love it. With that said, you all make sure to follow Eli on LinkedIn. Where else can they follow you, Eli?
Twitter. I'm at Woolery on Twitter. I don't post a ton of stuff, but I will post, about our podcast and other kind of work that we do. But yeah, feel free to hit me up there. for sure.
Love it. Love it. What's your number one takeaway for our amazing guide community?
What's my number one takeaway? Let's see. Gosh, right now it's just be kind to each other, love each other. You know, I don't know. It's not design specific, obviously, but we need more of that right now. Talk to each other. I love this. You know, I get to do a lot of what you're doing, Tim, on kind of the opposite side of the mic, right? Interviewing people, and it's just such a lovely opportunity to connect and understand. And a lot of the stereotypes you may have had about a person, given where they come from or where they live or what industry they're in, oftentimes evaporate after you have a chance to really talk with them in an hour or so. And that's why I love podcasting in general, because it's a medium that goes beyond the little quick sound bites. But take the time to talk to people. Take the time to talk to people that don't necessarily believe the same things you do too. So
true.
I said this message to we sent off our class of 2020 at Stanford yesterday. I sent this little story to them too. My brothers and I have a Slack channel, and that's pretty nerdy. I have 3 younger brothers, but we have Slack. And my youngest brothers are twins, and they're very different political beliefs. But they're able to have, and maybe this is because they're twins, they're able to have a debate around ideas. An occasional little personal attacks come in, but back in the day, they come back to each other. They obviously love each other. And I think we need more of that. We need more of people being able to talk to people that are on a different side of the political spectrum that we are, with respect. Respect them as a person. If you have to attack something, attack their idea. Don't attack them. And I think my hope is that people that have that attitude will help kind of heal and bring our country together more.
Powerful. Thank you so much, Eli, for coming on to the show and just sharing a powerful message in your story. And more importantly, we need to have you on for a future episode.
All right, I'd be happy to come back. Love the work you're doing, Tim, and thanks for having me on.
Thanks, man. Appreciate you, man.
Cheers.
Cheers. Bye. With that said, thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of Unleashing the Future of Work, a guide podcast. I want to make a few quick shout outs. If you're interested in being a part of Guide's early beta program, check out guideapp.co. We're going to be launching less than T-2 weeks. And we're really excited to have a few awesome creators take part in our amazing bite-sized skills training platform. You will be a part of an exclusive bunch. So definitely check out guideapp.co if you want to take part in our beta program for Guide. With that said, thank y'all so much, Justin, Dana, and everyone else, Akila, Ronald, who tuned in and watch this episode. If you love this episode and you feel as if someone in your network would appreciate and love it, definitely share it out. Tag your friends, tag Eli, tag me, and we'll make sure to boost your post and share it with our networks. With that said, you all, similar to what Eli said, be kind to each other, be well, be great, and peace, love, and talk to you soon. Talk to you soon.